A new device comes out, and us as tech reviewers, we get extremely excited. We do the unboxing, we want to see what comes inside the box, and then what we do is we end up using the device for 2 to 3 weeks, and for me, usually about a month before I post my full review. And then once I do, then I'm just moving on, and I'm not looking back at the device once again. But what about people that are not tech reviewers, and they need to use this as a daily driver? Well, thanks to Sprint, I ended up getting a whole nother month plus with the LG G2. So let's turn around and take a look back and see how the G2 performed as a daily driver and if it changed my initial impressions from my original review. If you haven't seen my initial review of the LG G2, then make sure you check that out. I'll leave that link in the description section below so you can check it out. In my opinion, it was definitely one of the better devices to come out last year, and this was LG's forward-thinking device that had the buttons on the back, and it was a little bit different from anything else that was out there, and it was kind of well accepted, but then for some people, they just could not get used to this back button. So let's talk about the hardware a little bit and what I thought about it in my extended use. I actually thought that it wasn't that hard to get used to the button placement on the back because I never really used that power button on the back. I used the knock knock feature where you double tap on the screen and it wakes the phone. So I prefer that method over any kind of unlocking actually, and it's on some of the other phones out there too, and I really enjoyed that about the device. The 1080p display does not disappoint at all, and these super tiny bezels on the side just make the device look awesome, and it just also makes it easier to hold in the hand. It's more pocketable, and I just love the way it looks because it's almost all screen on the front. Other manufacturers definitely should take note. Now, the one thing I did not like is this glossy plastic back, and the original one I reviewed had a black back and it was a fingerprint magnet, and the white one is actually a little bit better, but once you get oil and stuff on there, it becomes pretty slimy and it just feels cheap in the hand. I wish they would do something a little bit different here, but if you look at the LG G Pro 2 actually, they actually made a matte finish on the back. And the call quality continued to be good on the G2. Now, it's not the best calling experience I've ever had, but I didn't have any kind of drop calls or anything. People said I sounded decent on the other line, so phone call quality is definitely decent on the G2. The G2 is available across the carriers, but if you're thinking about getting it for Sprint, this is a Spark LTE capable device. So if Spark LTE is in your area, then you're going to get some very fast LTE speeds and great connectivity. So think about that if you are on the Sprint network. The software is going to be a little bit different across carriers because AT&T already has the Android 4.4 update, but the Sprint network still has Android 4.3 at the making of this video. So by the time you watch this, it could have the 4.4 update, but it still has this LG skin on it where if you look right there, there's 2 settings buttons on the notification tray. I don't know why. I mean, one's for a quick toggle here and the other one is for the actual settings. It just doesn't make sense why you would have 2 of them. I kept getting them mixed up for real. Like I kept hitting them and I kept getting completely frustrated. And there are just so many features on here. This pretty much suffers from the same thing that the Samsung Galaxy devices do because there's so many features that I don't use, but there are a few really good ones here, like how you can change your software buttons. I like that a lot, and you can change your theme from white to black and graded, and it makes it look really nice, and you can get a little bit of customization there. Personal experiences will definitely differ. Some people might not mind, but I like stock Android. I like simplicity, so all this clutter on the notification screen every day, it bothered me big time. And even these apps like Slide Aside, I never really used them. I preferred the multitasking on the Note 3 actually, and the way that they've done it on the G Flex. It's actually a little bit better than the way that they've handled it here. So with the update, you will get that. But I just didn't even really use any of these things. Even these little Q-Slide apps, didn't really use them either. So personally, I didn't care for them, but for other people, they might actually use that every day. But I didn't like how the Q-Slide apps were there on the notification tray either. So it's gonna differ for everybody, but software-wise, the LG skin is definitely not my favorite. What made the G2 more usable for me is installing something like the Google Now launcher, where it makes it look a little bit more like stock Android. This is the launcher from the Nexus 5, and it's very simple, and that's what I like, and it actually made the G2 a more pleasurable experience. Now, even though that the actual notification tray and all that still stays the same, it just gives it a more stock Android look. You might think that keyboards are all created equal, but for some reason I did not like the LG keyboard. It was just not evenly spaced out and it was a little bit hard to type. Now, I really love the stock Google keyboard, so this is Android though, so you can put these keyboards on there. That's what makes Android so flexible. So this was a very easy fix for me when it came to the typing experience on the G2. Let's move on to that speaker, and even in my initial review I said that the speaker wasn't the strongest, and that definitely continues here, and that's what mismatches this multimedia experience. The screen is so nice, but the sound definitely does not match. It's tinny, it's not bassy at all, and hopefully LG will take cues from HTC and give us a better speaker, so your actual speakerphone will be better and your multimedia experience will be better on the G3. It's not the worst speaker in the world, so don't let that hinder your buying experience, but I just want you to know that it's not the best speaker out there, just in case you're still thinking about purchasing this G2. Now, this 13 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization is still a great camera, and I love the camera interface on here. It's actually pretty simple. It's got a lot of features on here, and it's got a nice and fast shutter, and it still remains one of the better cameras that's out there. The G2 is one of very few phones out there with optical image stabilization, so it will help you stabilize this image while you're taking pictures and video. So you will get better pictures. I don't think you'll be disappointed in the camera at all if you were to purchase the G2. Now, if you are a gamer, then you will also not be disappointed in the Snapdragon 800 with 2GB of RAM and the Adreno 330 graphics. And it just chews through any game that's out there available on the Google Play Store, and I had no problems playing video games whatsoever on the G2. Actually a great experience because that screen once again is bright and it's beautiful. It is a little bit cold in tone, but it looks really good as you can see here, and no problems with gaming whatsoever. So if you're a big gamer, you will love the G2. Now let's talk about the battery life, because battery life is very important, especially when you're playing heavy games like this. And of course, if you're playing graphically intensive games, it's going to drain your battery much easier. But the 3000 milliamp battery that is in the G2, it lasts a long time. It definitely got me through a full day every single time, and sometimes it actually lasted me a little bit more, especially if you're a little bit careful with your screen, because that's the biggest thing. I love my screen on super bright all the time because I want to enjoy the screen, and even with my full brightness on the screen and with good use, I was able to make it through the entire day. So battery is definitely a go on the LG G2. Personal experiences may vary because everybody has a different thought of what's moderate use or heavy use. Some people want to game for 3 hours straight and wonder why their battery's dying. But for normal daily use, a little bit of gaming here and there, some Facebook and taking calls and things like that, that's stuff that you do on a normal basis, the G2 will definitely take you through an entire day. So has my initial impressions changed since I've had this now for an extended period of time? Not really, because the same gripes I had with it in the initial review period is the exact same gripes that I have with it right now. It really has to do with the software and not the hardware, because the hardware, yeah, it might be plasticky, but definitely the hardware is still competing with the flagship devices of today. You have to think about the Galaxy S4 with the Snapdragon 600, and it's a little bit behind, but this still has a Snapdragon 800 processor. It's got a beautiful 1080p display. It's got an optical image stabilized camera at 13 megapixels. I mean, if you're looking at this at a 2-year contract right now, you may have to kind of rethink it a little bit, but if you can get it cheap on a 2-year contract, maybe 50 bucks or so, or whatever it may be, this might be a great device for you, because not everybody does the same kind of buying that we do as tech reviewers. Most people want to buy what's cheap out there for a 2-year contract. So if you're looking at this as a cheaper alternative to your 2-year contract, then I definitely recommend the G2. Alright guys, well that about does it for me with this daily driver, a look back series on the LG G2. Let me know if you like this series and you like me looking back at some of these older devices. If you do, make sure you leave me a thumbs up and leave me a comment in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any more content like this. And please follow me on Twitter at SuperScientific. And thank you to Sprint for letting me have extensive time with this G2. And I will see you guys in the next video.